I wanted to talk about an idea I had for a hat, so we're going to go ahead and make our slip knot. And I'm using the red Nifty Knitted loom. This came in a package where there was a blue one that was smaller, the red one, then a green one, then a yellow one, and they're circle looms. They have a pretty big gauge, unlike the all-in-one loom that I've been showing in my videos recently. But I wanted to use this one because I know more people have this loom than probably the all-in-one loom. But the process I'm going to do on this will be the same process that you would do on your other looms as well. So don't feel as if you can't modify it to a different loom. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, after we get our slip knot, is place it on the first peg. And I usually like to find this part on my Nifty Knitted loom and place it right next to it. Now the idea that I have, we're going to first do a one cast on row and that's it. So we're going to do our normal E-wrap method. Snugging, making that a little more snug, grabbing both tails and going around to E-wrap it around. Okay, and basically you're going to do just like one cast on row, and then we're going to go right into the idea that I had. Unlike most videos where I've already done the idea and then I do the video, this time I figured I would just go right ahead and start with the video showing the process. Thought it would be a little interesting to see. Then you could see how my thought process actually works when I'm doing a project. Now go ahead and push these down because you got to go around one more time. Just so you want them out of your way. Now you can decide to wrap it all the way around, then knit over, or you can do it one peg at a time if you want. Sometimes you can control the tightness that you're holding the yarn at if you do a few pegs in a row instead of doing it all at once. Oops. And basically cast on rows, you're just knitting over. You can decide to do a crochet cast on for this as well. I'm just choosing to do the E-wrap because I know that's the more common one that people are more familiar with, and that it's a little more easier to do. The next process is actually going to require us to work one peg at a time. That's all we're going to do once we get done with this. We're just working our way back to the first peg so that we can start our process. You can decide to probably use two strands at once, which is what I normally recommend for the nifty knitters, is to use two strands of yarn at once, but I'm playing with an idea, so I only want to do one. This may not be a very thick hat, but it may be a great alternative to a spring or summer type hat if it's not as bulky when we're all done. Okay. Alright, so we got our cast on row. We're going to push these down again. Because we're going to need some room to work with a little bit. And now we're going to work one peg at a time. We're going to pretty much be wrapping and knitting over one peg at a time a certain amount of rows. What we're doing is creating a different type of brim. A typical brim, you're just going to wrap around the whole loom until you get a certain length below the loom, and then you fold it up and over to create your brim. This time I'm doing it a little differently to create a little more, hopefully, design in it. It's an idea that I had in the middle of the night, and I decided the best thing to do is when you have the idea is to go for it. So what we're going to do is, this is our first peg. We're just going to simply wrap it, knit over one, wrap it, knit over 2 times, wrap it again. This becomes 3 times, wrap it again, becomes 4 times, wrap it again, becomes 5 times. What you kind of do is you're going to see it making a little line on the back. It's a little hard to see right now, but it's making a line right there if you can see it. So that's what we're creating. So we did 5. I'm going to go ahead and do 10 of them on one peg. So there's 5, 6, 7. It's getting a little twisty, so you can turn it a little bit. So this is 7, 8, 9, and finally 10. I'm going to push that towards the back. As you see, we've got this little row of the things that we've knitted right there. We're just going to leave that alone and move over to the next peg and do the same 10 stitches on that one as well. So this becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, push that towards the back here, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now go ahead and go around all the other pegs until you get back to your starting one, doing 10 stitches on each peg. So keep going around until you get back to the beginning and you have 10 stitches on each peg, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I've already gone around and done my 10 stitches, and if you look, you can kind of see through them. It creates these different type of holes. This was our loop from when we first cast it on, which we will hide later on. But if you look, you can see that we got 10 stitches and it kind of stretches down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to switch colors, and we're going to do the tighter stitch for a few rows until we can bring this up as if it was a brim. So go ahead, and the way I usually do it is I just snip the old and attach the new. Now to do this tighter stitch, we're going to need the loom to be wrapped around 3 times, so there's 3 loops on it. So once I get this on, right now we're just going to put it over there. We will hide it in later. What we're going to do is we're going to wrap this peg, so we have wrap each around, circle 3 times, so that we have 3 loops on here. So this would only make 2. It might even be easier to hold it this way and wrap it. Whatever way is more comfortable for you. Now the reason I alternated the colors for this design is because I want this white to peek through the blue when we make it a brim. That's what we're hoping for. Excuse me. Okay, so we're almost back to the beginning. Now once you get back to the beginning, we need to go around one more time because we only have 2 loops. So kind of push these down a little bit as you before you start, give yourself room to put that last loop across. And what you can actually do is, because we've already got 2 on, you can work 1 peg at a time, which may be easier for some people. So if we wrap this first peg and we turn it, we've got 3 loops. And we're going to take the bottom loop over the top 2. And we can work each peg like that. Now it'll still leave, as you can tell over here, 2 loops on there. So go ahead and go around until you get all this over the first row. Okay, so go ahead and keep working your way around. Make sure there's still 2 loops on there when you're done, but go ahead and finish going around in this tight stitch. Okay, so I went around and I finished off that first tight stitch row. Now if you look, okay, you're going to have 2 on there, which means going around again is going to be easier because you just need to wrap 1. We do have some straggler yarns that we'll attend to later, but if you look on the inside of the hat, you can still see that we've got those ridges from the things that we did before, and we've got the cool 1 strand that kind of connects them in between. Excuse me. So what we need to do now is work that tight stitch to about the same width as we have down here. And although this was 10 stitches on each one, it doesn't mean that the tight stitch is going to be 10 stitches. That means you're going to need to keep going until you can kind of bring this up and it folds up and over. And again, you're going to grab a loop up here. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to work this until I get the white down far enough that I can bring the blue up. And then we'll go from there. So keep going until you see, again, that probably about an inch and a half of the project is white down there, and then we can test it and see if we can bring the brim up then. So I will see you back here in a little bit. Okay guys, I've worked the white down probably about an inch or so. If you look at where my finger is, it's probably about to the first, almost the second knuckle of my finger. And what we're doing now is we're pulling up the loop that from the first row we did up. And as you can see, what that's going to do is it's going to kind of let this be kind of cool. It's going to show the white behind it, which means that's why you want 2 different colors, so that you can see one color behind the other when you just design. It kind of gives it like just a little different kind of brim design, and you can see the strands in between just to give it a little more detail. It'll look cooler once we get it off the loom, obviously. But all we're doing right now, as I started, is you're going to bring up this part, and all you want to do is bring up a loop from the first row that we did. The first cast on row, and as you can see, all you have to do is bring it up and then just place it on. You only need 1 strand, so make sure you only have 1 strand, because that way you still have your 3 loops. So again, all I'm doing is going down and grabbing the first row and putting a loop on. If you've done a normal brim on a hat, that's all you're doing here, is you're going off that first row that we did, our cast on row, and grabbing a loop from the first loop and putting it back on there. And if you end up grabbing more than 1, just make sure there's only 1 strand on there. See how there's kind of an opening? I'm putting this over top of the peg. Again, see how there's an opening? You want it only 1 part in the peg. You're basically putting the peg through the hole. And you work your way around, getting all the beginning loops back onto the pegs. Okay, where's that one? It's a little tricky to see sometimes, but you just want to make sure it's 1 strand going on the project. And see, this one's messed up. I only need that 1 part in the front. Now, it's obviously different for me to look at it than it would be for you doing your own project. You're going to be able to find those loops a lot easier. And with this, you shouldn't need like your crochet hook or your looming hook until you get ready to cast over. So again, we're just working that first loop until we get back to the beginning. Working your way all the way around. Nice and gently, don't rush it. You don't need to rush it, just go around slowly, making sure you get it, because you'll get better practice as you do it. Okay, and make sure the strand that working yarn is kind of off to the side, out of your way, if it does happen to get caught up in there. Again, just placing the first loop that we did with the cast on back on the project. Okay, this should be our last one. Oops. Okay, get down there. Alright, so now if you see, we've got it all up. This is how our brim looks on the inside. You can see the white peeking through, and it just kind of creates a different, it's almost going to be like a reversible hat, because right now this is the outer part of the hat. Even though we're working on this part and you're looking and it's the tight stitch, this is actually going to be the inside of the hat. Or you're going to be able to use this as a reversible hat, which means you can do it just like this for one part and have this be your brim, or you can turn it inside out and have this be your brim, which again, excuse me, just provides a little more kind of like a fluffy design where people will see, see the white peeking through the blue that I have on here, or whatever color you do. I just thought this would be a different change of pace than doing the traditional brim hat that we normally do, which is the same process, knitting a bunch of rows and folding it up, but this time we worked each peg at a time. Now what we're going to go through and do, once I find my beginning again, is we're going to do that tight stitch again. And I still got those straggles that are in my way. So all you're going to do here is still got the 3 loops, so just go ahead and take the bottom loop over the top. That's going to help lock in my brim. So go ahead and go around and do that. Oops, excuse me, I gotta make sure oh wait, I gotta go back and fix something real quick. I forgot to move my working yarn out of the way, so go back. I'm going back, I'm gently moving this loop back over the loop, or the peg, and I'm looking to see where my working yarn is. It's kind of trapped in there. I don't want it trapped in there. So I'm going to gently move off a loop so that I can bring my working yarn back to where I need it to be. I accidentally hid it in there, so you just gently go back, and you want to be able to wrap that first peg, so you want it actually right there. So see, I had to go back and fix my mistake because I accidentally had wrapped this in. Now I can go back, now that my working yarn is out of the way, and knit over the bottom, over the top too, to help lock it in place. So go ahead and do that. Taking the bottom of the 2, you still have 2 strands on there, but go ahead and go and do that, and then we'll come back and we'll change back the color again, and we'll keep moving on in the hat. Okay, so now we already did our brim up, and we already went around and we did the tight stitch one more time. Now is where you have to choose whether or not you want to stay with the color that was your alternate color, or if you want to go back to what was your main color, which was the blue that we did for the brim. That is clearly up to you. So go ahead and figure out what you want to do. I'm actually thinking I might stick with the white for the rest of it, just so that the blue here will stick out more with the white behind it. So I'm going to actually keep the white on, but again, if you want to, you can simply switch it back to the blue if you'd wanted. I just want to show you that option. Now the other thing to keep in mind with this being just a Red Heart, medium weight 4 yarn, is that the tight stitch isn't going to be as tight as you think. Normally you would double up, but I didn't want this to be a really thick, warm hat. I want it to be a little more lightweight, so I only stuck with 1. But this is going to be a ridge that we can have as one part of the hat. And then you got the cool brim that we created, which is kind of a little more funky looking, just to give you a different kind of variety. And instead of doing a regular normal brim, you can have your colors peek out through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to keep doing the tight stitch until I get to the length of the hat that I want before I take it off. It could take a little while. It's really going to be up to you how long you're going to want it. You could do maybe 5 to 6 inches if you want for a smaller baby. You could go a little longer if you want. It's basically for the hat that's going to fit on there. I mean, I'm probably going to go a little longer before I take it off, but I'm just going to keep with the tight stitch that I'm doing, again, until I get it to the length I want, and then I'll do the gather bind off, which I'll come back for. So I'm going to keep working that. You can decide to switch up your stitch if you want. You could do a chunky stitch, which is where you wrap around so that there'd be 4 loops on, and take the bottom 3 over 1, or you can keep doing the tight stitch. I'm going to keep doing the tight stitch. So go ahead and work the project till you get to your desired length. And if you want to think of it, you can think of it almost like if you look at your crochet hook, which I know this one is not what most people use, but say you look at this and it's small, or a good example of how long you might end up doing it, and I just thought of this. So let's think of a pencil, an unsharpened pencil, correct? When you think of that, and you got your crochet hook and all that, but the unsharpened pencil might actually be a good guide if you got the hat long enough for a child. It's just something I was thinking of, so you can kind of lay it there and kind of see that if this pencil is probably what, maybe 10 to 12 inches, or less than 12 inches long. So for a baby, you're going to work your hat almost the length of a pencil. So if we have this in there, we've already got the couple inches there. So we're going to work it, if I can show, We're going to work it to almost the length of a pencil or just below the length of a pencil, and that includes it being part of the brim. Just as a guide, I guess, that might work. Excuse me. But go ahead and figure out what stitch you want to do, and keep doing it until you get the length that you want the hat to be, and then we will come back and we will do the gather bind off. Alright, I didn't work it down as far as I normally would, but I just wanted to show how it was looking so far. Now this is what the typical right side of a project will look like, and again I'm doing the tight stitch, and we have this little band of blue because when we brought these up to make our brim, we had to still knit them over, so we ended up with this nice, kind of cool little little sliver of a blue showing through. What's cool about this hat is this can be one side of the hat, but what we're going to do, we're going to take it off soon, and this is actually going to be the side of the outside of the hat. So let's go ahead and take it off so you can see the full project. Now what we have to do is we're going to go around and we're going to knit the row so we can get all these loops that we have off. So we're going to go around and knit one more time to take these bottom two over the top one. So we can quickly just wrap the loom, and we'll work it kind of one by one. So again, we're going to take the bottom two loops over that one. It's usually easier to work with one strand when you're casting off. At least I find it easier for me. So we're just going to do this. And like I said, this isn't as long as I would normally make a hat, but since I don't have a child that I can give it to right now, I figured I would just take this off as a sample. But again, you would go a little longer on making the hat to be good for like a toddler or a baby. So proceed to go around the loom till you get back to the start, removing your bottom two loops over the top, and then I'll meet you back here. Alright, so we went around, so we only have one loop on each peg now, and now we're going to take this off the project with the gather bind off. Now what I usually like to do, excuse me, is create a little tail. So we're going to cut a little bit, probably 5-6 inches off, and we're just going to leave that alone. Then we're going to create another strand to go around. Now what I like to do sometimes is gently take this and wrap it around the loom to get an idea of how much string I'm going to need. And I would say if you go around a couple times, that'll let you know how much yarn you're going to need to take this off the project. So once we get kind of back here, we can kind of snip the extra and then take and remove this. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a little slip knot in this. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to secure it to my anchor peg while I'm removing the whole project off. So we're just going to place this right here on our little peg that sticks out if you have the Nifty Knitter one. Give it a little tug, and that will keep this in place as we go around and we remove the loops off the peg. And it's almost like purling, but you're going to bring the whole string forward. So we're going to go down to grab that yarn that we just cut off to bind it off with. Pull it all the way through. Now you can wait to actually take the loop off the peg until you do a couple rows. Sometimes I like to do this just because that way I know it's all through all the loops. So I'm going to go around first and do this, just for a couple rows, or a couple more pegs. So like once you get a couple pegs done like this, you can turn around and you can go back and remove the loops off the peg. And again, make sure that your loop is staying on there, so you might need to tug it a little more. Keep an eye on this. You don't want this to fall off, because if this falls off, then you might lose your string all the way through the project. So just keep an eye on that as you go around. Again, I'm just going to go back and remove our checking my string that's on the peg as well. And if it comes off, that's fine. I mean, you can do a one peg at a time where you work your yarn through like this, and then you just pop it off if you want. whichever way is easier for you to do. We all have different ways that we kind of work on projects, and I think that's what's important too, is to do what's going to work the easiest for you, the method that works the easiest for you. So I'm going to continue going around until I get back to the front, taking the pegs off the loop, and then we'll do the final gather bind off. We are on the last few pegs that we're binding off here. Finish off these couple last pegs, and then we're going to pull this tight to close it off, and we'll have our little hat. What's happening is the yarn is kind of separating, so it's making it a little harder to do my normal turn to get it through. Okay, last peg. Alright, so we take that off. We don't need the loom anymore, so we can go back to our starting peg and remove that as well. And make that unloose. Move your loom out of the way. Now you should have pretty much 3 strands, and you're going to pull them so it closes off this. So you're just going to give them a pull. And as you can see, it's closing off the top of the, of the project. And you can kind of push it out to see how it's working. You want to go as tight as you can to close it off. See how that hole is getting smaller? If I go in through the side, you can see my finger through the hole. That's what we're trying to get closed off. Okay. And once you get it where you feel it's going to be closed off as much as you can, you see we still got the hole. We're going to tie it. Now this may not close all the way off, which is okay because we can make it close itself more. We're just going to tie it. Give it a nice firm tug, and as you see, that helps close it off a little more. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our crochet hook, and what I like to do is weave it into other parts just to kind of secure it in place a little more. So I like to go opposite of where I was, like over here, and grab both those that I had, and pull them through that loop. And then what you can do is you can tie it off again. See, that closes off our loop a little more. And then all you have to do is, I like to give it one more tie because I'm more superstitious that I don't want things to fall apart on me. So I'm going to do it one more time, just to make sure it's snug. And then I can trim these. And what happens now, oops, sorry about that, is our hat, which we have 2 ways to wear this hat. We've got this way, which is a simple baby way with this being a little decorative edge on there, or the way I want it is to turn it around and inside out. And if you see, this makes a little different type of hat. And we're going to pull this brim down a little more. So see, what we did in the beginning with our brim is we had a little more detail in there with doing that design we did at the beginning. So hang on one second and I'll be right back. Okay, as I was saying, when we turn it inside out, you almost get 2 hats for one. So we have this cool design now where we kind of did these little peekaboo spots so you can see the white in it, but it gives it a little different design on the brim. That's what I was going for. I was getting tired of the normal traditional looking brim. And again, because we did the tight stitch and we had to work the blue up, we end up getting a nice little added detail with the blue shining through. But this is just for a different type of brim, just something a little more funkier. You could even probably take yarn, or not yarn, but ribbon, and interweave it in here if you wanted to get more design. But again, you got like 2 hats in one. If you turn it inside out this way, you still got your idea of a brim because of that blue making an edge, and you got the tight stitch on this side, but you got the reverse of the tight stitch on that side. So it's really cool because you almost get like 2 different styles in one hat. And again, I'm just kind of pulling it down so you can see, but that's what I was going for, was just a cooler kind of brim, something a little more different than the normal flip up. And I like the idea of it kind of peeking through the other colors. So here's just a different brim idea to make hopefully what you will find as a cooler hat.